Hello everyone, Mindy Beverly with you here today with Sassy and Crafty. Today we are going to be featuring some of our amazing new stencils available in the Sassy and Crafty shop at sassyandcrafty.com, as well as one of our super fun new stamp sets. So let me go over the products we're going to be using for our project today. First, I'm going to be using this adorable stencil that comes with two pieces. It's called the Phases Stencil 2-pack. So it has the 2-pack stencil plus all of the little moon extra pieces that you can use for your masking and for stenciling. We're also going to be using the Psychedelic Twist stencil right here, this really cool kind of funky pattern here. We're going to be using this super fun stamp set. This one, we're going to be using this image. The stamp set is called Magic Within. You can see this super adorable little crystal ball with the little hands, and then you can stamp different sentiments. The sentiment we'll be using today is the future looks bright right there. I've already pre-stamped this image for our card, but also this stamp set comes with some amazing crystals. Right here, this one I just recently created this card with. So see how they can be colored, so fun, and make so many cool different designs. I'm going to be showing you guys how to create that fun embossed background too for our newest card. Okay, so let's get started. First, what we're going to do is you are going to stamp the image 2 times. I stamped it once from my blending cardstock and a second time on watercolor paper. This is just Canson 300-pound watercolor paper, and I stamped it with a waterproof ink. We are going to do a little bit of paper piecing here. To save on time, I went ahead and I pre-colored up this stamped image here, just the hands and then the bottom part of the crystal ball. I'm going to move that to the side, and we are going to ink blend our adorable little stamp in the center of that crystal ball. We're going to be using the Psychedelic stencil right here to create a really fun pattern design. So I'm going to take that out and let's get started ink blending. The inks I'm going to be using for this little crystal ball here is Distress ink in Oxide Salty Ocean, Distress ink in Wilted Violet, and then Distress ink in Chip Sapphire. And those are the 3 colors we're going to be using for the crystal ball. We're going to start with just an ink blend between the 2 lighter colors, the Wilted Violet and Salty Ocean. And I'm going to be using just 2 little blending sponges. You could also use blending brushes if you want. And I'm just going to take a little bit of the Salty Ocean, and I'm going to add a little bit of color, not worrying about the image around it, just focusing mostly on this crystal ball. We're going to be fussy cutting this out once we're done. So I'm just going to add in the upper right and left corners, the bottom left corner, a little bit of this blue. This is the Salty Ocean, just small circular pattern, just adding a little bit of base color for this technique. This would make some really fun little inspirational cards. This would be great to use with any of those other little images. You could do the same technique for those crystals as well if you didn't want to spend all that time coloring them by hand. You can just ink blend them and then use a stencil for some extra pattern. Okay, so once we've added in that Salty Ocean, now I'm going to be switching to my Wilted Violet. And right here, just adding a little bit of color to this right and left, the right edge and then the opposite edge. I'm going to leave this a little bit lighter, add a little bit of color underneath her hand here, but I do want this to have a little bit of shine, so I'm not filling up that little circular area there. I'm letting it blend right to the white of the paper. I'm kind of going on the edge of my blending sponge just to get a transition of color, like a little bit more saturated and then less saturation. I want kind of a shadow underneath this hand, so that's why I'm adding just a little bit more color there. And then I'm going to take my blue and then just smooth out this bottom edge. There we go. Okay, so that's good for our base color of that little crystal ball. Now I'm going to be taking our stencil And I'm going to be placing that right on top of our little design. I'm going to tape this down first, just like this. Let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can really see when I'm ink blending this. You don't want this to shift on you, so that's why I'm taping this down to my glass mat here. And let me get some more washi tape. Okay, just like that, just taping that down. Now I'm going to take my stencil and see how you have this really fun swirl pattern. I'm going to position this so that it kind of covers up my little highlight there, but still has this fun kind of swirly pattern design. I think I'm going to have it kind of going off the edge like that. I think that will be really, really fun. Maybe just barely going in like that. Okay, so I'm going to leave our stencil just like this position. I'm going to tape down the edges so it doesn't shift on us, just like I did for the watercolor paper underneath. There we go, and there we go. And then for this technique, I'm going to be using a little blending brush just because it gets into those delicate areas. And I'm going to be using chipped sapphire distress ink. I'm going to go ahead and load up my little brush here. And again, with circular motions, just kind of going right over that stencil area, pulling that off the edges, and making sure to get into all those little teeny tiny cracks there so that we can get that stencil to really show up nice crisp edges. Just like that, and then same thing on this little side here. This would make a really fun kind of Halloween background as well for a larger piece. Okay, so then once you are done ink blending to what you're happy with, then we can go ahead and remove our stencil. You can see we have that really fun kind of wispy pattern. And then since this is distress ink, I'm going to be activating this ink. I just have a little cup of water here and an old toothbrush, and I'm just going to spritz this off camera so I don't get little water droplets all over my workspace. And I spritz like 3 or 4 times just to get a random pattern, let it sit for just a moment. And then you're just going to take a rag or a tissue and just press down to blot up those little ink splotches. And then you can do it one more time just for that kind of galaxy looking mystical spritzes. And then again, let it set for a moment and then dab up those water droplets. There we go. That looks really cool. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just use some little scissors and fussy cut this image out. And we're just fussy cutting the crystal ball because we're going to be doing this like paper piecing technique. So super, super easy. Just going to follow right along the edge of our little crystal ball here. And almost done. Okay, so now that's all cut out. And now I'm just going to take some distress ink in black soot, and I'm just going to quickly ink around the edges so we don't have any of these little white edges showing, so they blend in with the stamp outline. So again, just inking right around those watercolor paper edges, This is completely optional, but I feel like it gives a cleaner look when you paper piece it on. Now we're going to take our little image here that we pre-colored, and we are just going to glue this crystal ball right on top of our stamp. Look how cool that is going to look. So I'm going to take just some dried clear adhesive. You could also use foam tape if you wanted to add some dimension and have it kind of popped up to you, whatever you want to do with that. And then just paper piece that right on top of your colored image. And I'm going to add a little bit of glue to this little piece that goes between those fingers there. There we go. And press that down. And you can see right there in between that one finger, I didn't cut all the way to the edge, so you could always just grab a marker, like a Copic marker. Since this was in purples in the top, I'm just going to use VO4 and just color in that little area. And then you can add a shadow underneath her finger there to give a little bit more depth in her hand. So again, just pulling that same Copic marker right underneath, right there. And then same thing on this side, just pulling that right underneath her hand to give that little shadow. And then on this right edge, there we go. And then here on the bottom part, we're going to add a little bit of shadow with this VO4 as well, in that same kind of purple color. And there we go. Okay, so now we can add a few more little details to this. I like to add some little dot details with my gel pen, so I'm just going to use a Jelly Roll pen. And if you didn't get the splatter exactly how you wanted it, you can always add those little details in now. So like some little, just little circle dots. I like to add the little shines, so right here I'm going to do like a little line, and then a dot, and then another little line on the opposite side that kind of curves, like a smile almost, that follows the curve of the crystal ball, and then a little dot on the edge. There we go, just like that. If you feel like your shadow got a little bit strong right there, you can always add just a little dot over that to break that up. And then we can add a couple little detailed lines to the bottom of our crystal ball here. It's up to you. I always love to do that on my coloring. So there is our little image all set to go and all ready for our card. So now what I did is I took from that same stamp set, the Magic Within stamp set, I stamped that sentiment, "The future looks bright," onto a little star. You can see it clipped off the edge there, but no big deal because that's going to be nested behind another star. So I cut one in the white, stamped the sentiment. I cut an additional one in glitter purple cardstock, and then I cut one more star, just a smaller size, in that same purple glitter, because I wanted that to layer over the edge there. So I'm just going to layer these stars first. I always like to cut just an additional layer for any kind of sentiment in a different coordinating color, and then just having it make it look like a shadow layer by just barely offsetting it. Oops, I'm going to take that same purple and just get those edges really fast of my star before I add it onto my background. Okay, so just like this. And I am just going to layer it nested off the side so it has just a little bit of that shadow layer showing. And then press that down. Just like that. And then we are going to be, once we layer the card, we'll layer this other little star off the edge like that. Okay, so now we can go ahead and we can start assembling our card. We do have one more item to ink blend, so we're going to do that now before we assemble. Let me move these to the side. You're just going to cut a square of plain black cardstock. This is about 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches. I used a die for this, but you don't have to. And just like before, I cut a coordinating little glitter cardstock. I did black glitter cardstock in the same size as this one, so we can do a shadow layer. And just like before, we're going to tape down this little square here so it doesn't shift on us. We are going to be doing some embossing with this. So I'm going to be using the Sassy and Crafty Moon Phases stencil. To pack, we're going to be using this top layer of the stencil with the different moon phases showing. Okay, and then we're going to layer this. We're going to see which position we think looks best for our card. Probably like that, and then we're going to tape down the edges so it doesn't shift on us. Making sure we have it really even on all sides. There we go. Okay, so now what we're going to do is get another little blending sponge, and for this technique I'm going to be using the Hero Arts Unicorn White pigment ink. You could use any pigment ink that's white. It will work just fine for our embossing technique. So I'm just going to load up our little sponge and then just start adding color to the little cutout areas of this stencil, of that white ink. And again, small circular motions, just pull that color through all of those little moons. Again, just pulling that color across this entire stencil. You can see, since this is a little bit transparent, this pigment ink, it makes for this really cool shaded effect already, just ink blending that. So again, just pulling this color through all of those stencil areas, making sure I get good saturation and I get all of these blended about the same level. So just pulling this color through, and then I just have these bottom ones to get. Just like that. And this bottom edge. And you want to work quickly on this because you don't want the ink to dry all the way, because we are going to be embossing right over this white pigment ink instead of using an embossing pad made for embossing. Okay, so I think that's good. So now we're going to go ahead and remove our stencil, just like that. And now we're going to just put a scrap paper underneath our workspace. And I'm going to be using the embossing powder. This is Kindred Stamp's Prismatic Embossing Powder, but you could use any like white or kind of clear silver sparkle embossing powder. I'm not going to worry about using any kind of dust or non-cling powder on this, because even if I get some of this that's off of the stencil, it doesn't matter, because this is supposed to be a night sky and you're going to have little stars showing up too, so I don't mind if I have a few little stray pieces. So there we go. Just tap that off, and then I can use my heat gun to go ahead and set this. Just going to set this aside. So I have my little heat tool here. It's going to be really loud for just a moment while I quickly heat set this, so I apologize about that. And another tip for this is I like to heat it from the bottom first so I don't blow all this embossing powder off. So I'm just going to heat it from the bottom, and then I'm going to go ahead and emboss it from the top. You can see once it starts changing, this side. Okay, And that's all you really need to emboss that. And that is all ready to go on our card. Look how cool that turned out. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and just layer up our card and we will be all done with it. So let's just quickly clean up our space here. And then we can add all these layers together. So like I said, I cut a coordinating glitter black cardstock. I'm just going to go ahead and glue our embossed piece on top of it, layered in the center of the glitter cardstock. There we go, and then pressing that down. I like to use a little braider tool here just to make sure I get it nice and flat and the edges don't curl up on me. There we go. And then I just have a regular A2 size card base here. I cut a coordinating glitter card mat and a galaxy card mat. These are just 1/8 inch smaller on either side, so they nest into each other. So I'm just going to add those 2 layers quickly, gluing them right on top of my card base. So my glitter cardstock layer first, the purple glitter, that matches those stars, and pressing down. And then my galaxy mat, just adding a little bit of liquid adhesive around the edges, and then pressing this down as well into the center of our card. Okay, so now I'm going to take my little moon phase mat, and I'm going to pop this up on just a little bit of foam tape for some added dimension. Just going to quickly add this into the middle. And then one more on this edge, or in the center. There we go. And then just removing the backing. Placing this into the center of our card base. Okay, pressing down. And then I like to take my center image and I'm going to go ahead and pop that up on foam tape as well. I'm just going to add foam tape to the very center, and I'm going to add 2 layers of foam tape to our little image because I want to have those stars nested at different layers too. Different heights for more interest. So we're going to go ahead and place this right into the center of the card, maybe just like right off the bottom edge there. Just making sure. I think that'll probably be good because I'm going to have it the stars layered on the side. Okay, so then just press that down. And then we're going to take our first star, and I'm just going to add adhesive to the back, the sentiment star, and I'm going to layer this off this top edge. The future looks bright, and press that down. And then last but not least, I'm going to take our little star, and I'm just going to add a little dot of foam tape to the back of it so it can pop up one level between the top layer and the bottom. And I'm going to cover up that little cutout spot that I had there, and then just press that down. And there we go. We have a card all 100% complete using that super fun stenciling techniques for both stencils. Again, the products I used today is the Sassy and Crafty Moon Phases Stencil 2-pack. So it comes with this one and then the one that we ink blended on. And then I used the Psychedelic Twist Stencil as well, right here. And then last but not least, the Magic Within stamp set, right here. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining me today. I will see you guys again soon. Remember, you can get all these products at sassyandcrafty.com. Thank you. Bye.